Hello everyone and welcome back to the Stormblood Dungeon Lore series. In these videos I'll do my best to explain the lore behind each dungeon of Final Fantasy XIV and go over some things about them that you might not know. Today's dungeon is Kugane Castle. The great port city of Kugane is famous for being the only port within the Hingashi continent to remain open to foreign vessels and dignitaries for trade and accommodation. As such, the streets thrive with markets from the local Hingan traders, hoping to sell their wares to other locals and foreigners alike. As the city retains its stance on being a neutral zone, many embassies reside in the Aegean or foreign district of the city, including Garlemald and Thavnair among others. The Sekiseigumi, meanwhile, peacekeepers and essentially police officers of the city, have a zero-tolerance rule for outward violence between the different cultures in Kugane, and even go so far as to cut down any who break this rule on sight. Aside from the other Far Eastern buildings and the famous Kugane Tower, the most standout structure is the huge one built atop the wall opposite the pier, overlooking the entire city. This is Kugane Castle, a mighty structure used not only for defense of the city should it come to that, but also as a place for the higher regarded merchants and dignitaries to experience the finest hospitality that Hingashi has to offer. Visitors will immediately recognize the beauty of the Kugane Garden, a shimmering pond and flat stones set in the green grass of the area. Across a nearby bridge lies Ninomaru Manor, where the visitors would be welcomed and accommodated for their stay. The innermost wall of the castle, Honmaru, is host to the Budokan trading grounds, as well as the famous No Theatre, both used for fascinating performances to impress those that might invest into Hingashi properties, as well as to help express further the culture of the continent. The castle usually stands as a mere overlook for the city, and never in real need for other foreign attendees to enter the place. The Warrior of Light, however, finds themselves accosted by an East Ordinard trading representative, who tells them that the castle has been overrun by outlaws, and that the culprits have already taken hostages into the deepest part of the castle. Their demands are that Kugane closes off trade with the outside world, insisting that the foreigners can only bring more trouble should they be allowed to remain. The Sekiseigumi stands in an awkward position, as they cannot act rashly without risking harm coming to the hostages, one of which is the Bugyo, the highest ranking magistrate within the city. With no time to send word to the royal palace of Hingashi, the Sekiseigumi have requested aid from the East Ordinard trading group due to another hostage hailing from Uldar. The representative suggests we pay a visit to the aqueducts flowing underneath the city to meet the Sekiseigumi guard there in order to receive a brief on the plan to infiltrate the castle. In the tunnel we find said guard, and they explain that the group that overtook the castle were a handful of criminals led by a local merchant called Kageyama. Again we're informed that he intends to force Kugane to close its borders, but seemingly more for his own gain to prevent any competition with foreign businesses. The real danger, however, seems to be the personal bodyguard hired by Kageyama, a famous underworld swordsman that is known for charging extreme amounts of coin for his services, but in return the skills the man displays are inhuman, correlating to the amount of gold he receives. The plan therefore seems to be that the contingent of adventurers will enter via the water systems, while the Sekiseigumi make their own intrusion to rescue the hostages. The guard then admits his shame of asking a civilian, but admits that no other way seems feasible, other than to enter the castle in this more inconspicuous fashion. The group emerges from the well that leads down to the flowing water, and begins making their way through the grounds of the castle to reach Kageyama. The Joyi guards, the criminals hired by the merchant to assist his hijacking, attack on sight as we attempt to push through to the Kugane Garden. They seem to have brought several automatons with them in addition to the guards, each of which also assault the party with large swords. In the second open area we cross the bridge and are assaulted by the Joyi Genin, emerging from the nearby waters along with the second automaton. After this, we reach the garden proper to find a Zuikomaru, a much larger automaton guarding the entranceway to Honmaru. The Zuikomaru uses its large blade to swing wildly and heavily at the group, greatly damaging any caught in the cleave. After some time, a rigged Harakiri Koisho appears, another automaton armed with a large explosive that locks onto a party member. The group must tackle the Koisho quickly, as its explosive detonates whether it is defeated or not, meaning that the further away the automaton can be destroyed, the better. The Sekiseigumi meanwhile uses its blade once more to jump heavily onto the group, using a helm-cracking slash. When injured, the Sekiseigumi is supported by multiple of the Kosho at once, requiring even more care when disabling the latter. After this, the gates of the Keisen Garden open and we proceed up into Honmaru, entering the large building near the centre of the main castle building. Our foes here consist of the higher ranking Joyi troops, including several summoners, each of which attempt to summon forth a Koji should they succeed in channeling the spell. The party also faces more automatons, the Onmitsus, each of which throw large shurikens at will. After a while we reach another antechamber with 2 of these Onmitsu, followed by 3 summoners simultaneously attempting to call forth a creature. After handling these summoners and anything they manage to summon, we reach the Budokan training grounds, where we find Dojun Maru facing us. This automaton was intended to be a last line of defense before entering the rooms before the theatre, should intruders come to pass. But it seems as though the conspirators running amok have reprogrammed the machine to attack its defenders instead. The automaton is impressively designed to use versions of the Mudra-based abilities seen in use by shinobi, and often calls forth more of the Onmitsu to aid itself. Shortly into the battle, the Onmitsu appear and ready Tatami Gaishi, delivering a firm kick that upends the tatami mats within the room, and balancing and tossing any caught on the affected mats into the air. Dojun Maru meanwhile uses Clockwork Raiton to zap the party with electricity. When injured, the automaton calls its own Onmitsu to the arena, each of which again launch shuriken in all directions at the party until defeated. After avoiding a second wave of shuriken and a handful more of the tatami launching attacks, we can move on to the Honmaru Manor, the innermost part of the castle. Here our foes become all automatons except for the Karasu Tengu patrol in the corridors, presumably summoned by the more elite Joyi troops beforehand. Proceeding up the stairs we find 2 more Kyofusa in the last corridor leading to the No Theatre. In the hall before the theatre, many masks drop from the nearby walls and with a puff of smoke become yet more automatons, including more of the Kosho we saw earlier in the Keisen Garden, each of which explode after a time if not defeated. After tackling the automatons, the final door to the No Theatre opens, where we can see Kageyama upon the stage as we come to face his final sellsword. The mighty samurai Yojimbo, one famed for fighting only for the coin the buyer can afford, appears from a trapdoor in the theatre and prepares to attack. Progressively through the battle, Yojimbo requests more and more coin for his services from Kageyama to contrast the pressure he feels fighting the party. Each time he does so, Yojimbo calls forth his faithful hound Daigoro to collect the coin, adjusting the strength of his following attack based on how much Daigoro manages to retrieve. The follow-up attack unleashes Yojimbo's true sword, Zanmato, in an almighty circular swing around himself. When injured, Yojimbo decides to get serious, unleashing his Inoshikacho attack, energy-filled butterflies that burst after a short time. Finally, Yojimbo requests yet more unreasonable amounts of coin from Kageyama, which the latter provides to his annoyance. This time, as well as Daigoro, Yojimbo calls forth several dragon heads which unleash beams of light at the party, distracting them from collecting the gold which Daigoro again begins to scoop up. After surviving Yojimbo's second strike with Zanmato, he tells Kageyama that if the coin is dried up, then his sword no longer serves a purpose here, returning back down the stage door and leaving Kageyama to grovel for forgiveness at the party's feet. With the castle freed, we return to the training officer who has heard the good news, and tells us that although Yojimbo managed to escape unseen, Kageyama was taken into the custody of the Sekiseigumi. At that moment, a member of the Sekiseigumi arrives, announcing that the Uldan delegate has safely been escorted back. The person in question turns out to be Lady Liliju, niece of the infamous Lolorito himself. She tells us how she left Uldar inspired by the Warrior of Light to have her own adventure, and put to paper literature of her travels. Although the East Aldenard representative wonders if she might return home, Liliju disagrees and insists that a tale of a Far Eastern kidnapping could not possibly be the height of her journal. The representative asks why she chooses to travel so far alone in that case, and Liliju feels that she is being smothered by her uncle, coddled and looked after as if a child. She then outright refuses any guard sent by her uncle, but agrees to return to visit the trading company with many souvenirs and tales of her journey. Turning to the Warrior of Light, she is delighted at the experience of encountering us so soon into her adventure, and knows that that meeting will be one of the greatest peaks of the tale. And that's the end of the story and lore of Kugane Castle. The beautiful high-set building towering over Kugane, temporarily overthrown by the greed and recklessness of a Hingashi businessman. With the Warrior of Light's efforts, the place is not only open for its cultural experiences once more, but Liliju now has a great few pages to keep for her future memoir. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more Final Fantasy XIV lore, and I'll see you next time for the Temple of the Fist.